What would you do if the entire world looked at you and laughed, just because you stepped into a place they believed you didn't belong? On the scorching concrete of the SWAT training center in Austin, Texas, 21 figures stood in a straight line beneath the searing sun. 20 men, all muscle and confidence, and one woman silent, her face calm but her eyes unwavering. Vanessa Miller, 34 years old, the only one wearing a worn-out jacket with frayed backpack straps. She adjusted her gloves, kept her breathing steady. Sweat glistened at her temple, but her spine remained straight, like a declaration, "I didn't come here to be accepted. I came to prove something." "Next," Miller barked Lieutenant Rogers, his voice dry and laced with impatience. She stepped forward, 3 steps in. Then a foot suddenly stuck out. Deliberately. Not an accident. She tripped. Her backpack dropped, gear clattering sharply against the ground. She fell hard onto the concrete right in front of a wall of sneering faces. And then the laughter erupted. Not the kind that slips out by mistake, but the kind that reeks of judgment. "You'd be better off back at the records room, sweetheart." Rogers sneered. Another voice added flatly, "Women like her should stick to 911 call centers. Leave the real action to us." A few trainees pulled out their phones, filming her on her knees, gathering her belongings. No one helped. Not a single hand was offered. Vanessa said nothing. She didn't flinch. She simply bowed her head and picked up each piece of equipment, hands as steady as if she were collecting ammo in a war zone. And when she stood up, her jacket shifted slightly, revealing a flash of gleaming metal over her left chest. Someone saw it. A military medal. Not flaunted, not announced, just there, like a quiet reminder. She didn't come here to learn how to fight. She came to remind them what real battle looks like. And for just one fleeting second, her eyes locked with Rogers. And he hesitated, not from fear, but because there was something in her gaze that made all their cheap laughs suddenly feel pitiful and absurd. They thought they had just humiliated a rookie female cadet. But what they didn't know was that they had just disrespected the wrong woman. They laughed at her because she looked too ordinary. They assumed she was only there because of a diversity policy, a polite way to disqualify her from what they called real merit. But what no one knew was that she hadn't come here to seek an opportunity. She came to honor a promise made to someone who never made it off the battlefield. Vanessa Miller, 34 years old, living alone in a small apartment on East Austin's edge. No husband, no children, no social media. Just 2 framed photos on the white wall. One, her college graduation. Her father's eyes were red, and her mother hugged her tightly as if she never wanted to let go. The other, the only female operative in a unit photo from Afghanistan, standing beside 3 soldiers who were still alive, only because she held the overwatch position with millimeter-perfect cover during a brutal ambush. 8 years in the military. Her official record, a single word, logistics. But in truth, she was a sniper instructor, part of Special Support Unit 5. And that glint of metal tucked beneath her jacket that day was proof of a battlefield where she did not retreat, even as blood soaked her shoulder and the word "help me" crackled through her radio. 3 years ago, she left the army, returned home, took a job as a 911 operator. Not to hide, but because she believed she could save lives not just with a rifle, but with her voice. And she did. During a school shooting, she guided a wounded officer on how to bandage himself, call for backup, and ultimately rescue an entire class trapped inside. That act, reluctant as it was, earned her a nomination for the SWAT training program. But in her application, she left the combat achievements section blank. She didn't mention that he once broke a sniper record during a sandstorm. She didn't mention that the same men who laughed at her had once sought her advice between life and death. I didn't come here to impress. I came to see whether someone who once fought to survive still has worth in their eyes, even if she says nothing. In a system obsessed with asking, "Who are you? What have you done?" She chose silence. Because some battles don't need to be announced, they just need to be continued. No one had to openly push Vanessa out of the training program. They didn't need orders, no direct confrontation. All they had to do was one thing: stay silent in the face of injustice and laugh when failure showed up. From the moment her application landed on the command desk, whispers spread like wildfire across the department. Vanessa Miller, that 911 operator. She shakes more than a rookie every time she touches a gun. Put her in SWAT, and when the shooting starts, who's gonna take the fall? These comments weren't whispered. They were said loud, clear, with a tone bordering on pride. At first, a few colleagues even congratulated her. But just days later, when she walked into the break room, conversations died. The "You Go Girl" cheers lost their soul smiles, turning into masks that hadn't dried their glue. When she signed up for after-hours shooting practice, the range was always accidentally booked. A birthday party, a team-building event, or some unverifiable excuse. The door to training quietly closed. No one needed to touch the handle. And when formal drills began, fairness became a tool of sabotage. Captain Reynolds, the lead instructor and a former Marine, handed her a faulty radio during a team simulation. Connection lost. Mission failed. When she reported the broken gear, he just shrugged and announced to the whole squad, "In a real op, that's a dead team. Run it again." When male candidates had technical issues, their gear was swapped instantly. But Vanessa, she was the live example for the class. See that she hesitated. She opened the wrong angle. She exposed her entire body. And that is why women don't belong in SWAT. They made her carry the 20-kilogram battering ram, the door-breaching tool that was normally rotated between trainees. This time, no one took a turn. Under the blazing Texas sun, with her back soaked and palms slick with sweat, she paused for 1 second to readjust her grip. And like a trap waiting to spring, Sergeant Hayes's scream erupted. "You just killed the team. The hostage is dead. Your teammates are dead. All because you couldn't hold on to a piece of metal." Silence followed. No one spoke. A few eyes turned away. A few looked annoyed, not at the injustice, but at the inconvenience. That night in the locker room, she opened her water bottle and found it had been filled with salt water. She said nothing, just quietly poured it out, drank from the hallway faucet, and returned to prepare for the next day. That was not the silence of someone giving up. That was the silence of someone who had survived war and understood this truth. Some bullets don't travel with gunpowder. They travel with prejudice. And those are often the most accurate rounds ever fired. By the third week of training, Vanessa was summoned to the command office. The heavy wooden door closed behind her with a muted thud, sealing in an air thick with suspicion. In front of her sat Chief Wallace, an aged face, eyes void of emotion, and beside him stood Deputy Chief Morris, arms crossed, expressionless. Wallace opened with what seemed like a respectful preface. "Miller, I'll be direct. This isn't about gender. It's about capability." But wrapped beneath that neutral phrasing was a piercing implication. You don't belong here. They spoke of responsibility, risk team safety, that some things were simply too dangerous to gamble with, especially when the risk factor was a woman who in their eyes had never truly seen combat, though they were mistaken. Finally, after 20 minutes of circling the subject, Wallace offered a respectable alternative, an administrative leadership position overseeing SWAT operations from behind the scenes. You'll still be part of the team, he said, just in a role better suited to your strengths. The offer was neatly packaged in professionalism. But in his voice, Vanessa heard the rejection loud and clear, a polite invitation, designed to quietly push her out without ever being accused of discrimination. She sat still, didn't flinch. Inside her jacket, the military medal pressed against her chest, like a silent reminder that she had survived real war zones, not to be dismissed now by someone else's unspoken fears. Her voice was calm, measured, unwavering. With all due respect, sir, I'd like to continue with the training program in accordance with the stated policy. Every candidate has the right to attempt the final stage. Wallace narrowed his eyes. The irritation began to show. Policy is one thing, he said. Reality is another. I've run this unit for 15 years. I know what works in the field. Vanessa lifted her chin, her gaze locked on his. So do I, sir. That's why I'm here. Morris exhaled a sigh, like a well-worn script. They couldn't stop her from continuing, but they wanted her to know she wasn't welcome. As she stepped out of the room, she heard Wallace mutter to Morris, "Get me the evaluation standards. We need to tweak a few things." She closed the door quietly, not rushed, not dramatic, but from the hallway she could feel the shift. The eyes of those watching weren't just curious anymore. They were beginning to realize that the woman they tried to eliminate was the only one refusing to retreat, and that was starting to scare them. The final day of training arrived under a sky heavy like a storm waiting to break. But the pressure wasn't in the tests themselves, it was in the eyes, watching her, waiting for her to fail. Only 12 candidates remained at the training camp. Vanessa still, the only one who didn't fit the mold. That morning, the unexpected presence of Chief Wallace and the senior command team made it clear this wasn't going to be a standard assessment. Captain Reynolds stepped forward with a smug grin and addressed the group. Today's test was designed by elite military specialists. Dynamic scenarios, hidden targets, long range, maximum pressure. It separates those who can do from those who only think they can. His eyes flicked to Vanessa, and she understood. This test wasn't just a skills check. It was the final trap. Each male candidate stepped up. Good performances, but not flawless. Some missed long-range targets. Others exceeded the time limit. Reynolds nodded, gave feedback, and even offered encouragement. No one was sabotaged. Then, it was her turn. Lieutenant Rogers, baring his yellow-stained teeth, sneered loud enough for all to hear, $10 says she can't even hit half the targets." No one laughed, but no one objected either. Vanessa stepped forward, unhurried. She removed her cap, took a deep breath. Her hands might have trembled, but her eyes didn't. In a brief, silent gesture, she removed a leather cord from around her neck and pulled out a small brass object, old, dulled, a military badge that had followed her through 3 deployments in Afghanistan. She kissed it, then slipped it into her chest pocket. No one around understood. But in her mind, she could smell old gunpowder. She could hear her team calling her name through gunfire. She could feel the lives she had saved and the ones she couldn't. The buzzer sounded. The test began, and she moved. Everything unfolded like muscle memory written into her bones. No excess, no hesitation, no waste. Each bullet left the chamber like it had traveled this range 1,000 times. Hidden target, hit. Moving target, hit. Long-range shot, hit. Midway through, her weapon jammed, a coincidental malfunction she had known all too well. No curse, no pause. She cleared the jam in 4 seconds faster than the training manual standard. The final target, nearly impossible, sat just beyond the optimal range for a handgun. Others had skipped it. She didn't. Her final round sliced the air, and landed dead center. Silence. The entire field froze. All eyes turned to the digital scoreboard, lighting up highest performance ever recorded. Record-breaking time, accuracy 100%. Reynolds double-checked the data. His face paled. Rogers opened his mouth, but said nothing. Chief Wallace, for the first time, nodded, not out of pride. But there was no longer a single excuse to deny what had just happened. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" someone finally asked. Vanessa replied, calm, as if reciting a fact from memory. "Sniper instructor. Special Support Unit 5. I trained the people who designed this test. It's all in my file. I assumed you had read it." There were no claps, but dozens of eyes dropped to the floor, not out of shame, but because for the very first time, they were forced to look at themselves. Just hours after Vanessa stepped off the training field, video footage of her final exam began circulating within internal police forums. By the next morning, it had leaked to the media, the very news outlets that once questioned her with headlines like "SWAT Barbie, should standards be reconsidered?" now changed their tone. Shocked former female operative breaks SWAT record. Perfect accuracy. Reporters began digging into her past, and for the first time, the parts Vanessa had chosen never to mention were unearthed one by one. A Silver Star Medal was awarded for covering and rescuing 3 wounded teammates during the Kunduz ambush. A medical report showing she once took shrapnel to the shoulder but held her position to the last second. Testimonies from snipers she had trained, now serving on the front lines, who credited their survival to her guidance. The city council, previously silent, now rang the police chief's office demanding answers about biased assessments and internal prejudice. The police union, which had long remained quiet in the face of gender discrimination allegations, suddenly issued a statement: "We welcome all outstanding candidates, regardless of gender." Vanessa said nothing. No posts, no interviews. But she knew real strength doesn't come from microphones. It comes from persistence that no one can shake. A week later, at the department's largest press conference of the year, Chief Wallace took the podium and called her a living testament to excellence beyond convention. He raised a hand, inviting her forward beneath a storm of camera flashes. But the smile on his face never reached his eyes. And in his polished speech, he conveniently left out the closed-door meeting held the night before, where legal advisors warned, "If you deny her, after a public record breaker, this department will face a national-level lawsuit." Vanessa's victory came from real skill, but it was also the result of a system forced to look at itself. Behind the scenes, an anonymous letter had reached Internal Affairs detailing proof that Lieutenant Rogers had manipulated recruitment standards for 3 years to filter out female candidates. Emails, recordings, hallway conversations, all exposed. A month later, he was demoted and reassigned to the supply department, a place where no one remembered the name once barked across the training field. As for Captain Reynolds, the man who once screamed that she killed the whole team just for losing grip, stood before her after her first official meeting as a SWAT officer, his tone noticeably softer. "We need your experience. We'd like you to lead sniper training for the entire unit." It was an offer anyone else might have seized as sweet revenge, but Vanessa simply shook her head. Not proud, not smug, just calm. "I didn't come here to stand above them. I came to stand with them, to earn respect, not command it." That answer left Reynolds silent for a long time, because in that moment he realized she hadn't just changed the outcome of a single test. She was redefining an entire system, not by tearing it down, but by forcing it to shift around her. She didn't accept the role of head instructor. She didn't demand authority. She didn't need a title to prove she had been right, but she still taught, quietly, effectively, and no one dared to take her lightly. In her first weeks as an official SWAT operative, Vanessa declined every interview request. When journalists asked about discrimination, about the humiliation she once endured, she gave only one answer. Every organization has areas it needs to improve. I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to do the work. But she wasn't completely silent. Instead of speaking to the media, she went to human resources. She proposed reforms to the entry-level training protocols. No lowered standards, no favoritism, just additional objective evaluations separated from instructor bias. Her proposals were quickly approved. But when the reforms were announced, her name was now here in the internal memo. And she didn't ask for it, because Vanessa never fought to be remembered. She fought so that those who came after her wouldn't have to endure the same. After hours, she started a private training group, unofficial, unfunded, for young female officers who wanted to pursue tactical roles. She taught them how to shoot, how to control their breath, how to hold their stance in tight hallways when adrenaline surged and every instinct screamed to fall back. One senior officer, who had once mocked her efforts as covert gender privilege, quietly came to observe a session. That day, Vanessa gave no speech. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I'm not training them to be exceptions. I'm training them to outperform every standard, so no one has any excuse left to disqualify them." 2 weeks later, the new training protocols were formally integrated into the department's academy curriculum. No one mentioned the initiator. She remained silent because results matter more than recognition. And soon, those who once mocked her began to shift. They didn't apologize. They didn't come to make amends. They just came to ask. One morning after a gun range session, a new male recruit, tall, seasoned, walked up to her and asked how to handle corner angles in tight corridors. She showed him. No reminders, no mentions of the past, because if she brought up what they once said about her, they'd feel ashamed. But if she said nothing, they'd change. And change was always the goal. 1 year after shattering the SWAT field record, Vanessa was no longer a stranger within the team. But she hadn't become a legend in anyone's speech either. She existed quietly, exactly the way she chose, an indispensable presence, never the center of attention. That morning, Austin's air was strangely cool. At the Western Training Ground, she was leading a group of recruits, both male and female, in emergency room entry tactics. They stood in formation, shoulders, aligned eyes, focused sharply on every instruction she gave. And for the first time, no one questioned an order from a woman. As she corrected a trainee's stance, the chain around her neck slipped slightly from her collar, revealing the medal she had kept hidden during her early months. After the session, a young female recruit, her hair still unfamiliar with sweat and grit, hesitantly asked, "Ma'am, who do you wear that for?" Vanessa paused, then offered a faint smile, not soft, but the kind that surfaces from something deep and long remembered. "For a friend," she replied. She didn't die because she lacked courage. She died because her team wasn't trained properly. She gently touched the pendant's surface, then looked the recruit directly in the eyes. "Every time I teach a new technique, I'm keeping a promise I made to her." The young woman lowered her gaze, and Vanessa walked away, no more words needed. But minutes later, watching from afar, Vanessa saw that same recruit repeat the drill, more precisely, more fiercely, and hit the target dead on. In that moment, Vanessa knew she had done the right thing, not because she had been recognized, but because now people like her no longer had to break records to be believed. After training, she sat alone, at the edge of the field, gazing into the distance, where recruits laughed, practiced, and no longer cared where anyone came from. No one noticed that before she left the range, Vanessa had left behind a small, handwritten note on the training board. No name. Just a simple sentence: excellence doesn't shout. It just refuses to be ignored. Vanessa Miller's story isn't just about the journey from a dismissed 911 operator to a full-fledged member of the SWAT team. It is a powerful reminder of a truth society often forgets. Excellence doesn't need to be loud, it only needs to be relentless until it can no longer be ignored. Vanessa didn't fight back with anger. She didn't retaliate with words. She never used her past to justify her place in the present. She simply worked quietly, consistently, until every prejudice, every smirk, every act of sabotage had no choice but to step aside. The greatest lesson here isn't that she proved others wrong, it's that she held on to what was right and never let go. True strength isn't always about breaking the system. Sometimes it's about standing firm within it until it has no choice but to shift around you. Personally, I believe that what makes someone truly extraordinary is the ability to walk silently through places where others scream to be seen. Because not everyone great needs to stand in the spotlight. And not everyone is quite weak. Some people, like Vanessa, choose to win without crushing anyone. They simply make the truth too undeniable to be dismissed. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who's quietly fighting to be recognized. And please subscribe to Toch Story, where we tell stories that not only move your heart, but make you reflect on who you are and believe that sometimes the right silence can be louder than 1,000 screams.